Round 6 of the ANZ Championship saw 5 Trans-Tasman clashes with Australian teams dominating, having 4 wins out of a possible 5. We had the grand final rematch with the Firebirds and the Mystics, the Firebirds taking the points in the exact same winning margin from last year's grand final. And finally, we have a clear top 4 leaders. As I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. Dan Ryan here alongside Sharelle McMahon. And Sharelle, as we approach the halfway mark of the season, we're finally starting to see the pretenders separating from the contenders.
Well, we really are, and what a difference just a week can make. We've seen, obviously, the Magic and the Firebirds struggle a little bit early in this season, but now they're sitting 5th and 6th position, just 1 win out of the top 4. So, you know, a big difference in just 1 week.
Sure, lots to talk about today. Let's have a look at all the results from round 6 of the ANZ Championship. It started in Sydney on Sunday with the New South Wales Swifts getting over the line against the Central Pulse by 3 goals. In the grand final rematch, it was a 14-goal victory for the Firebirds against the Mystics. That was played on the Gold Coast. The Magic getting up over the West Coast Fever, and very impressive victory there. And the Thunderbirds 10-goal winners over the Southern Steel on Monday night. And the Vixens, very impressive winners over the Canterbury Tactics. Sure, let's have a look at the first game, the New South Wales Swifts against the Central Pulse. It was a game of 2 halves, the Swifts dominating the first half, the Pulse much improved in the second half, but in the end a 3-goal victory for the team from New South Wales.
Yeah, 3-goal win just to the Swifts, and I don't know that they really expected the Pulse to push them as much, particularly after that really strong first half that the Swifts had. We saw them make a lot of changes, and the Pulse really took advantage of that.
Well, the Swifts won the first half by 9 goals, and then the Pulse won the second by 6. So, as I said, a game in 2 halves, but the Central Pulse in that last quarter had 4 chances with about 5 minutes to go to level the match, but they just couldn't capitalise.
They couldn't, and that's kind of the difference you see with, you know, a team like the Vixens, for example, who in the last few weeks when the game's been tight and on the line, they really stand up and make it count. And the Pulse had their chances and unfortunately just didn't capitalise on it. And, you know, it's an interesting one for the Swifts. They'll go back and look at that game, and yes, it's great to have some fantastic flexibility and be able to bring players on and off the bench, but you know, that settled lineup and combination is something perhaps they're still searching for, even though they're in the top 4 now.
Yeah, fair to say that their season is right back on track. 3 wins from 5 starts. As you mentioned, they've snuck back into the top 4. And probably what's a good sign for the Swifts is they won the game without Kimberly Green, who was ruled out with a foot injury. But the players like Monty Gerard and Susan Prattley really stepping up on Sunday.
That's right, and we didn't see the normal combinations that we see. So in the defensive end, we saw Sonia McCloma starting on the bench and Carla Dewocki on the bench as well up the other end. So when we weren't seeing the usual combinations, and still in that first half they really took off.
Sharelle, let's have a look at the grand final rematch now. The Firebirds against the Mystics, that was played on the Gold Coast. It was the exact same winning margin from the final in 2011. The Firebirds getting their season back on track as well.
Yeah, it was amazing really to have the exact same margin that we saw, particularly after the Firebirds have been struggling to find that little bit of form in the first half of this season. And potentially they were quite bitten by the result down in Melbourne, and I don't know, I've just got a feeling about the Firebirds that they've started off a bit scratchy, but I can just see them beginning to fight and find form. They are just fighting every step of the way to find it, and perhaps this is the start of something great for them.
Yeah, ominous signs for the rest of the competition, that's for sure. Chelsea Pittman was cleared to play for this game. She lasted just the 1 quarter. 14-all at quarter time, Sharelle, and then Mystics made a couple of changes to the defensive line, which really didn't work in their favour, and then it was Firebirds all the way to the end.
Yeah, there was just those few changes, whether that threw them off or not. Latu obviously came off, I think it was at half-time or 3/4 time, around that time where she had an ankle injury and couldn't continue on. So there were certainly some changes that happened throughout the Mystics lineup, and you know, we've seen that from the Firebirds too, through, you know, trying to find form and a few injuries that they've had too, that they've had to tamper with their lineup. And yeah, it was interesting to see how both teams coped.
Speaking of finding form, fair to say Natalie Medhurst, Romelda Aiken, Laura Geitz, the real barometers in that Firebirds outfit are just starting to get into gear now.
Nat Medhurst, I was really impressed with her combination with Romelda. I mean, I think that was such a beautiful part of their game last year. It was almost impossible to stop. If you were shutting Romelda down, Nat would come in and take over the shooting role. And, you know, I think that started to build again this week.
Let's now have a look, Sharelle, at the Magic and the Fever. A really important game for both teams as both are trying to get their way into the top 4. It was a really convincing victory from the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic. 16 goals, a big winning margin for them, but momentum now starting to swing in their favour as well.
It is. I mean, they had a tough game last week against the Pulse, which they pulled out in the end, and quite well in the end in that last quarter. and again against the Fever. And I kind of thought this game might be a little bit closer than this, but the Magic, as you said, they are another team who have just got so many champions through that lineup, and you can see them just pulling together and really fighting as well.
They scored 65 goals for the match, which is the equal highest score. Of course, the Vixens got bat this round as well. So the scoring volume is there. But if we have a look at the goaling split, Irene van Dijk 37 from 39 and Juliana Nopu 28 goals. So that's some incredible volume for both their shooters.
It is, and you know, a great split. And often I think you'll see with the really top teams that, as I mentioned with Romelda and Nat Medhurst, when the split's there, it's really hard to shut down. So that's a great stat for them, and perhaps just that experience that the Magic have right throughout that lineup, just getting over the top of the inexperience of the Fever, and you know, just getting on top of them in that way in the end.
Yeah, some key defensive stats too, with Liana de Bruin and Casey Williams combining for 3 rebounds, 6 intercepts, 18 deflections. So they're now starting to gather a bit of momentum as a defensive unit as well.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're on paper they're the best defensive lineup in the competition, and you know, that they've been just growing, and I think it's been interesting for me to watch. You know, they've been swinging in between positions, trying to find that right combination, but they will be formidable when they click.
Absolutely. Well, Cheryl, let's have a look at the ladder, at how it stands after 6 rounds of the competition. And we finally have a clear top 4 for the first time since this competition began early on this year. The Vixens and Thunderbirds in the top 2 spots, the Mystics occupying 3rd space, and the Swifts have jumped into the top 4 for the first time. And then, Cheryl, we have from 5th down to 9th, all teams sitting on 4 points.
Yeah, all teams are really fighting for that top 4 position, and that's why these next few games are going to be so crucial for these teams to really find form and get some good wins on the board.
Round 6, Cheryl, who was your performer of the week?
Well, my performer of the week is Tegan Caldwell, the 5th player in the history of the ANZ Championship to shoot a 100% game, 29 from 29. It wasn't just 5 from 5. She had the volume there as well. So, you know, she is an athlete who is really growing with the experiences that she's having across this season and becoming a real key to that Vixens lineup, and you know, they're sitting on top of the ladder doing well. Yeah,
certainly a cracking game from Tegan Caldwell. Cheryl, my performer is Katrina Grant, the captain of the Central Pulse. Her stats for the round game against the Swifts: 6 rebounds, 7 intercepts, 2 deflections, only 9 penalties. Such an unassuming player, but so effective.
Yeah, they're incredible stats, really. I mean, to only have 9 penalties but still turn the ball over that many times. Great performance.
Unbelievable. Well, let's now have a look at all of the action for round 7 of the ANZ Championship as we preview what is coming ahead. This is the matches that will be coming to you. The Thunderbirds up against the Fever on Sunday in Adelaide. The Swifts taking on the Vixens in Sydney. The Steel up against the Mystics in Dunedin, the Pulse up against the Magic, and the Firebirds taking on the Tactics Monday night in Brisbane. Cheryl, let's start with the Firebirds against the West Coast Fever. They met only a fortnight ago, but they're going around again. This should be an interesting game.
Well, it will be, no doubt. As you mentioned before, the Fever have been on the road quite a bit over the last few weeks, and again they're on the road to take on the Thunderbirds, who really have you know, found some fantastic form, and only a couple of weeks ago it was a 12-goal win to the Thunderbirds. So the Fever really will have to turn their performances around to get this win. It's going to be a tough one for them.
Probably the biggest game of the round will be the New South Wales Swifts hosting the Melbourne Vixens. It's 1st versus 4th. Old rivals from way back, these two. Probably the big talking point about this game will be whether Bianca Chatfield is back for it, whether she's cleared for the Vixens, and Kimberly Green, who we believe may have stress reactions in her feet. So an interesting one for both teams.
Yeah, really. I mean, Bianca Chatfield came out of the Vixens lineup last week, and they were able to cover that beautifully well against the Tactics. The defensive lineup didn't seem to miss a beat. So it'll be, you know, we'll wait and see how Bianca recovers from that injury. And again, Kim Green, just they're such crucial players within both teams, but both teams were able to still get those wins without those two, you know, leaders on and off the court.
Another game we'll have a quick look at, Cheryl, is the Central Pulse up against the Magic. Both teams looking for their 3rd win of the season. It's their first clash against each other for the year, but some real key matchups we're looking forward to. Van Dijk against Katrina Grant, and then Caitlin Thwaites up against Liana de Bruin. Should be a beauty.
Yeah, there's great contests right through the court on this one, and the Pulse, you know, they're sitting 9th on the ladder, but they have really pushed some of the top teams. So I think the Magic will see this as a really dangerous game for them, and, you know, particularly for that momentum we've been speaking about that's starting to build for the Magic. So if they really are to make a charge for this Final 4, this is a must-win game for them.
Well, Sherelle, now time to do our tipping competition. We're deadlocked at 20 apiece. It's a very exciting competition we're running here. We still don't know what we're playing for, but we'll sort that out later on. Who are your tips for round 7 of the ANZ Champs?
Okay, my tips for this week are the Thunderbirds, the Vixens, Mystics, Magic and Firebirds.
All right, Sherelle, I'm tipping pretty much the same as you, I think. Thunderbirds, Vixens, Mystics, Magic and the Firebirds. So we're going to be deadlocked for another week.
We're still going to be tied again. Okay, I'm happy with that.
Well, that is about it for another episode of Centre Pass. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you jump onto the ANZ Champs website and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Also check out the 10 Sport website and Sky Sport website in New Zealand. Make sure you jump on board Fantasy Netball as well. Check your local guides for all the broadcast details for round 7, and we will catch you again next week on Centre Pass. Sherelle, thank you again as always.
No problems, thank you.
We'll see you again next week on Centre Pass. Goodbye for now. Thank you to our sponsors, our principal sponsor,
Associate sponsors,
support sponsors and suppliers,
and broadcast partners.